I really don't want to give you the wrong idea about the unconscious because of the sort of negative consequences or pejorative thoughts that we've used. You know, the unconscious is something that interferes. The unconscious is something that can make people sick, because it's not that way at all. I mean, the other aspect, we have to think of all these other things that come from the unconscious, of which, you know, dreams seem to be a very important aspect. And yes, dreams are going to require an entire episode to talk about dreams. But for instance, we can talk about famous dreams that have solved problems in the world, right? For instance, you might not know that James Watson, one of the co-discoverers of DNA, Watson and Crick were stooped by trying to find the structure of DNA, and James Watson had a dream one night, the famous dream of a double staircase, and waking up from that dream, he realized that the structure of DNA was a double helix, like a double staircase. Another dream that's kind of famous has to do with Niels Bohr, who is given credit for the modern sort of picture of the structure of the atom. He had a dream in which he saw the arrangement of electrons, neutrons, protons, and out of that dream he knew that he had found his structure. Another example I can think of is Dmitri Mendeleev, who was the creator of the periodic table of chemicals. He had a dream in which he saw the periodic table, and he wrote that from what he put in the dream, he only had to make a few corrections in waking life, because the entire, again, structure of how it all went together came to him in a dream. And finally, we could say Friedrich Kuckeley had a famous dream of the snake eating its own tail, the so-called Ouroboros symbol, that helped him see the structure of the benzene ring. So these people are Nobel Prize winners, and their problem solving came in dreams, or in other words, from the unconscious. There are a lot of famous books that began as a dream. Mary Shelley had a dream in which Frankenstein appeared, and that was the basis of her novel. Same thing. You've heard of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a depiction of conscious and unconscious itself. And Robert Louis Stevenson had that in a dream. And finally, other artistic projects come in dreams. You've probably heard the song Yesterday by the Beatles. Paul McCartney got the melody and the opening sentence in a dream. It came to him. He wrote it down upon waking, went back to sleep, and then when he woke up, he couldn't believe what he had written down. If you don't like the Beatles, you might be a Stones person. Can't get no satisfaction. Same thing. Keith Richards had that in a dream. One night, wrote some things down. When he woke up in the morning, he had the song. The unconscious is creative and inspiring. Things that we can't quite get a hold of are there, just not quite conscious until we get a little help and bring out this creative aspect. I'll give you another example of helpful things in the unconscious. What about intuition? We kind of take intuition for granted, and then we say, you know, there's no psi, there's no mind reading. Doesn't have to be that. Intuition is, I think, an aspect of that other part of our brain, that part of our unconscious, which is working on many different channels that of perception that it's almost impossible for the ego to be conscious of all those channels at the same time. I don't know if you've had intuitive experiences. I could list, some famous things that have happened, like, Swedenborg's dream of the burning in Stockholm, things like that. But I ask you to really think about your own experiences of intuition. And that's the unconscious. All I can do is share an experience I had a long time ago when I was a minister in a church, and we had a thing where people would come off the street to ask for food. We had a food pantry. And I would just be sitting in my office, and people would come, and I would take them. They would get food. So this one time, this guy comes. He asked for food, and I did my usual thing. I left my office. And in walking down the hall, when I turned my back to him, I had just a gut intuition feeling that this was really dangerous and I shouldn't turn my back to him. Just a powerful, sort of overwhelming yelling from somewhere deep within me that things were dangerous. And we went around to the door to the food pantry. I opened the door, went in the food pantry. He came in behind me. And then I guess you call it a panic attack. Basically, is that he was between me and the door. And again, something was screaming. It was a really dangerous situation. Now, I have to say that I was so defended, so ego-bound, that at that time, I completely ignored what my intuition was telling me. I didn't do anything about it. And in this case, I was lucky because we get in the food pantry and he says, I really don't want food. And there's the chill in the spine. I need something to sell. And then he sort of looks around, and there was a radio on the shelf, sort of, boombox type of thing. And he says, I'm going to take that. And he took it and hightailed it out the door, back out on the street. And then I look out my office window, and he's at the traffic light where cars are stopped, and he's going from car to car, holding up this radio, trying to get $20 for his meth or his coke or whatever was popular at that time. Now, I mean, this is two kinds of unconscious, right? You could ask, how could I be so oblivious that I couldn't tell he was high and he was jonesing for whatever he was jonesing for, and that it was dangerous. Even though my intuition, my unconscious, was telling me exactly what was going on. And the answer is, I was so cut off from that I couldn't take in that kind of intuitive information. But I would today. Okay. One way to think about intuition is as pattern recognition. Anthropologists and other researchers have found that, the human brain, human beings, are a pattern recognition machine. We will see patterns where there are no patterns, much less unconsciously perceive patterns that exist long before we're able to articulate what it is that we are intuiting. So that pattern recognition is important in that it remains unconscious, and sometimes it can take hours, days, weeks to realize that we have had a perception of a pattern in life, in nature, everywhere you care to look, we have those patterns.
It is the character that is doing it. There is a definite inherited complexity. You see, we are born into a pattern. We are a pattern. We are a structure that is pre-established through the genes. It is a biological order of our mental functioning. As for instance, our biological or physiological function follows a pattern. Man has a certain pattern that makes him specifically human, and no man is born without it. We are only deeply unconscious of these facts because we live all by our senses and outside of ourselves. If a man could look into himself, he would discover it. And when a man discovers it, in our days, he thinks he's crazy. And he may be crazy.